Good afternoon, It's Mr. Westra here with Half Brother Reading 17. Just to give you a heads up of where we've been. So last time we read, Ben came in. Ben was home from school because he was sick, and Zan was screaming in his suite, and Ben burst in to find Zan in the learning chair. Ben took Zan out of the learning chair, and Zan ended up biting Ryan Cross. He is one of Richard's research students. Um, there was also a fight between Mike and Ben. Mike was throwing stones and rocks and hit Ben and Zan, and so Ben took offense to that and went after Mike. And we also find out that the learning chair leaves, as well as Peter decides to stay. So this is Half Brother number 18, and we are going to read the entire chapter number 14. Chapter 14. Summer. There was no way we would have been invited to the party if it weren't for David's brother Cal. He was on the first nines rugby team, and they just won the Howard Reese Cup this afternoon, which was a big deal. The school always won. The main hall was filled with trophies. I think they might have lost once, back in the 1950s, but only because 3 of their best players had polio or something. It was Saturday night, second week of June, and there was a bonfire going on the beach, and lots of beer, and people with painted faces bellowing rugby chants and jumping into the lake. Most of the kids were seniors, so I hardly knew anyone. I was sitting on the sand with Jennifer, Jane, and Shannon. "I think we're the only grade 8s here," I said. "It's pretty cool," said Jennifer. "This is like the party of the year." "Some beverages?" said David and Hugh, grinning. Dripping bottles of beer dangled from their fingers. "My parents made me promise I wouldn't," said Shannon. "Mine too," said Jane, and took a beer. "I'll share yours," Jennifer said to me when I took one. Beer was disgusting, even worse than wine, but David and Hugh were drinking it, so I figured I'd had to also. The shadows got deeper and more jagged. Callie Brown appeared suddenly from the darkness, and then she and Hugh disappeared together, hand in hand. "She's like a vampire," said Jane. "It's like she wants to suck out every ounce of his blood." "Ugh," said Jennifer. Then, a few minutes later, Shannon said she needed to go to the bathroom, grabbed Jane and Jennifer by the hand, and then they all went off together. "We won't be seeing them for several hours," said David, slouched against a tree. "So, Tarzan, good year for you?" One of the best things about private school was that it finished earlier than public school. Classes had ended yesterday. Next week was exams. Then it was summer. "Great year," I said, "as long as I don't flunk finals." He snorted. "You'll be fine. But how are you going to cope this summer without us?" I laughed. "What do you mean?" "The entire Godwin family is going to Europe, my friend." "Are you serious? How long for?" He held up all 5 fingers of his free hand, then put down his beer and held up his thumb. "6 weeks?" I exclaimed. "Yep. They're calling it the trip of a lifetime." "Are you seeing every country or something?" "One every 2 days, I think. Yeah." I took a big gulp of beer. In my Project Jennifer logbook, I'd already written down a list of the fun things we could do this summer, and I had a whole schedule drawn up of how I was going to how I was going to get to second base with her. Third base wasn't even under consideration yet. I thought it was important to set reasonable goals. "So you get back when?" I asked. "Early August." "Oh, man." "Yeah, I know," he smirked. "Watching the Flintstones alone isn't much fun." I looked at him. Wondering how much he knew. Everything, probably. "I need another beer," he said, then ambled off. I waited for him a while, and then felt like a goof sitting all alone. Empty beer bottle clutched in my hand, I wandered along the beach looking for Jennifer. The bonfire had burned down, and the only light came from the occasional blinding flare of car headlights up in the parking lot. I nearly tripped over a couple making out. I thought I caught a glimpse of Hugh and Kelly Brown, all tangled up, groping furiously. A group of people with their faces painted blue ran past me, screaming, towards the water. I kept walking until there was no one around. 6 weeks in Europe. Jennifer hadn't mentioned anything. Maybe she just found out. "Ben?" said someone, walking towards me. I squinted. It was Shannon. "Hey," I said. "Oh, thank gosh." She actually grabbed me and leaned her head against my shoulder. "I thought I was lost. The bathroom is a million miles away." "Where are the others?" "They took off. Jane said she saw Black Widow outside." Hilarious. I could see Jane doing something like that. As we kept walking, I realized this was the first time I'd ever talked to Shannon alone. She hardly ever talked when she was around Jane and Jennifer. Maybe Shannon was afraid of being mocked too. I hope I get to meet Zan one day, she said. I looked at her and smiled. Yeah, he's great. He's turning 1 next week. It must be amazing what you guys are doing. It's pretty neat, yeah. This sounds stupid, but I loved those Curious George books when I was little. You know those books? Sure, I loved them too. I thought having a monkey as a pet would be the best thing in the world. I mean, I know Zan isn't a monkey. Is he as naughty as George? Much naughtier sometimes, I laughed. I always liked talking about Zan, so I told her a bit about him as we headed back towards the party. Jane and Jennifer were there at our old spot with David. Hugh had returned with Kelly, both of them looking pretty rumpled. You guys are such good friends, Jennifer said sarcastically to Jane and Jennifer. She said there was a black widow spider, Jennifer protested. Someone got bitten last month. Didn't you hear about that? Jane snickered into her beer bottle. I sat down beside Jennifer and waited until the others were talking about something. I leaned in closer. I can't believe you're going away, I whispered. Dad kind of sprang it on us, she said. 6 weeks, I said. She looked at me gravely. Yes, but I will return, Tarzan, I promise. And she kissed me in front of everyone. On June 20th, we celebrated Zan's first birthday in the backyard. Peter was there and lots of the other students. I wanted to invite David and Jennifer. It was my last chance to see them before they left for Europe. But Dad said it should just be people Zan was familiar with. He didn't want Zan to get overexcited. As it was, he was pretty darn excited. I didn't know if he understood what was going on, but he wolfed down 3 huge pieces of Mum's banana cake, had more glasses of ginger ale that was good for him, and ripped the wrapping paper off his presents with lots of hoots and shrieks. Mum and Dad got him a new ball, and I got him another bird feeder that we could hang up in the backyard to attract even more birds. Listen, bird, he signed to me when he opened the box. Peter got him a pair of his own sneakers because Zan was fascinated by people's shoes and was always pulling them off and trying them on himself. Dad invited the local paper and then sent a photographer to take some pictures of Zan, surrounded by all of us, singing happy birthday to you before he cut the cake. Dad figured it might undo some of the bad publicity we got after the biting incident. See, he's so adorable and no one lost a finger. My own birthday, 10 days later, was pretty good too. Much better than last year's. This time we actually made it to Beaver Lake, leaving Zan at home with Peter. I really liked it being just the 3 of us. When Zan was around, all eyes, including my own, were on him. He was the star of the family, the celebrity. I wondered if I was still a bit jealous of him sometimes. But it was strange being without him. When he was little, we'd sometimes taken him with us shopping and even to restaurants. But now that he was so active, we couldn't take him out in public. He wasn't used to cars or big crowds. He might get freaked out and bite someone, or, and this was the scariest to me, he might run off into the forest and he'd decide he didn't want to live with us anymore. Dad had once said that if we ever took him out in public, we'd have to put him in a collar and leash. But I'd hate to see that, even if it was for his own safety. I stretched out on my beach towel. School was all over now. My final marks weren't the greatest, but I'd improved a bit, and that seemed enough to satisfy Dad. He wasn't going to pull me out of Windermere. I closed my eyes and thought of Jennifer, somewhere in Europe. I thought of smoothing suntan lotion on her perfect back. When we got home, Mom and Dad gave me a great new photo enlarger as my main present. And in the evening, instead of going out to a restaurant, we just ordered in Chinese food because that way Zan could be with us. I wouldn't have felt right without him. Just knowing Jennifer was on the other side of the world made everything feel less like summer. I thought about her all the time, wrote about her in my bulging logbook, and reread the old bits. It wasn't only notes and observation. It was also a diary. Our after-school makeout session took up about 10 pages. I hadn't wanted to leave out anything. Sometimes I just described how I felt about her, or I'd imagine things we might say to each other and do together. I wouldn't say it ever got dirty exactly, but there was some pretty personal stuff in there. The only picture I had of her was our class photo, but in my head, She got more fabulous and luscious with every day, until she was so overwhelmingly beautiful I could barely stand it. So I wouldn't go crazy with boredom. Mom and Dad signed me up for these summer day camps at the university. I wasn't wild about them, but Mom said she wasn't having me loafing around the house in July. So I'd go in with Dad in the mornings, and while he worked in his office, I swam and did team building stuff and made tie-dye t-shirts with a bunch of other 13 and 14-year-olds. Probably I should have seen it as an opportunity to make friends and meet cute girls, but there was only one girl I was interested in. I got a couple of postcards from David and one from Jennifer. Hers was from Italy and had a picture of the Roman Colosseum. At the end she wrote, "Wish you were here," followed by 2 exclamation marks and a heart. The world should have been in Technicolor, but it seemed more like black and white. Towards the end of July, Peter asked if I wanted to catch a matinee of Conquest of the Planet of the Apes. I was pleased he thought I was cool enough to hang out with. He drove me downtown in his beat-up Corvair. Near the passenger seat, there was actually a little hole in the floor where you could see the road. We had the windows rolled down and the radio going. I decided I wanted a car just like this when I got my license. The university year had ended back in May, and Project Zan had lost a few of its students for the holidays. But Peter had stayed on and was doing a lot more shifts over the summer. I got to help out more too. I wasn't collecting data anymore, but I didn't care. I just wanted to be with Zan. With the learning chair gone, Zan seemed much happier. The temper tantrum had fizzled out. He'd started signing more and learning faster. We were in the cinema with our popcorn, waiting for the movie to start, when Peter slouched down in his seat. "Oh man," he said in a whisper. He tilted his chin. "Creepy Susan Wilkes." She was sitting near the front with some guy. She didn't work with Zan anymore. I wasn't sure if she'd quit or Mum had fired her. I'd once overheard Mum saying to Dad, "She has designs on you." Whatever the reason, she was gone, and I was glad. Zan had never liked her much, and I didn't either. Then the lights went down and the movie started. It wasn't as good as some of the others in the series, but it was still pretty entertaining. The apes led a revolt against the humans who'd been enslaving them. Those damn apes, huh?" said Peter as we walked out, quickly, so we wouldn't run into Susan Wilkes. "Rising up against us like that. That's what happens when you make them cook for you," I said. Peter chuckled. "Yeah, I guess we had it coming. Hey, you don't think Zan has a plot to take over our house, do you?" "Ben," said Peter, "he's already done that. Wake up."